Getting on to what I think are the exciting bits now, why I really got into bikes in the first place, playing about with engines. So today what I'm hoping to do is to get the piston rings sorted, put them on the right pistons, get the pistons actually onto the engine, and then I'm going to finish tidying up the barrel and paint the barrel. If I can get all of that done, then I'm ready then to start laying out all the things I need to do to then put the engine together. So I need to get on with that. If you're new to this channel, you won't necessarily know that when I bought this engine and first tried to run it, got it running but it was leaking oil and I knew that it had some issues. But when I stripped it, I found that I had some Yoshimura pistons. And one of the problems that I had was the rings that had been put on them were actually too small and had scratched the bores on the previous barrels. So I ended up where I've had to buy a new set of barrels, and you can see another video where I was cleaning them up and getting them sent away. Anyway, here you go. This is how they arrived back. Have a quick watch of me unboxing them. Having got them back, give them a clean over, ran the measure over them like you do. I'm quite happy. They are really well bored. I can see the nice cross hatching on them. They're ready to go. Now, you may have also heard the tale of the piston rings. Because they were too small, they'd scratched the bores, so I had to get some piston rings to actually suit these pistons. And it's a long story, and although these are marked as 812cc pistons, in reality they're 823cc. Yoshimura used the same blanks and machined them slightly bigger with bigger piston rings so that they gave 823cc instead of 812. Now, my understanding, and if I'm wrong, put it in the comments, these pistons were actually made in a factory by a company called ART, A-R-T, and that's the same company that actually made Honda's piston rings. So they're cast ones, they're not forged, they're anything more exotic than that, but basically they're the same sort of pistons that Honda would have used. So when I'm doing the ring gaps, I'm going to use the standard measurements. I haven't got any data for these. They are bigger, they're 3.5mm bigger, but I actually think that the clearances on the piston rings that are for standard, as long as it's at the, it's not below the bottom, I think will be absolutely fine. So the pistons are numbered 1 to 4 in the same way they would be in the manual for all the settings you do on a Honda 4 like this. These are the rings that I bought, and they are genuine Yoshimura. The company I bought them from, R&D, who are in Cheshire somewhere, actually bought up a lot of old stock from Yoshimura Development Inc., is it? Something like that in the States. They bought it in the 80s, so they've had them for a while, and I was fairly lucky to get them at quite a reasonable price from R&D. So, ready to go with them. I've also got some new gudgeon pin circlips, all from Honda. So, and a couple of good feeler gauges so that I can check the gaps. I intend to check the gaps, put them on the pistons, put the pistons onto the engine. This shouldn't be too difficult. Hopefully the end gaps are going to be okay and I'm not going to need to adjust them. If I do, I might have to file them down a bit, we'll see. I've fitted one of the original piston rings that I had in here and one of the new ones in here. You can see that the gap, which was nearly 2mm with the ones that were fitted previously, was far too big. Imagine the problems with the compression with that, never mind scratching the bores, and the actual gap that it should be, and this is just above 0.2, which is right. There are 3 rings for each piston. The top one, which is a plain ring, you can see it's just like a rectangle, is the compression ring. The second one, which you might be able to see, has like a little step at the outside. Now these type are known as scraper rings.
and that's the one that goes second one down. And the final one, and this is an oil ring. Now, a lot of oil rings are actually made up of 3 parts. This is a fairly simple type that was used by Yoshimura, and this is to actually scrape oil back off the bore and push it back down. The 3-part ones have like a spring in the middle and are a bit more fiddly to work with. Now, as for clearances, the top 2 should be 0.2 to 0.4 of a millimetre, so 0.2 is a minimum. The reason you don't want it below the minimum is when the ring expands, you don't want the ends of the rings pushing against each other and then seizing in the bore. So the minimum measurement is very crucial. The oil control ring actually is 0.1 to 0.3 of a millimetre, so it's actually a little bit tighter on the clearance, and I suspect that's just to make sure that it will actually fit well into the bore and scrape the oil back down. There's lots of different wisdom about where in the bore you should measure these. Now, for me, I always think it's best to get it somewhere in the middle of the stroke. So whether that's right or wrong, what I'm going to do is actually push it down so that I'm past the land and just about to where the gudgeon pin is. Yeah. So if I do that, it'll make sure it's square in the bore and that it's part way through where the bore would actually, where the piston would actually be sweeping. So I'm going to start with the bottom one, the oil control ring, and these are brittle, you don't want to damage them. So just squeeze it so it gets in. And then I'm going to use the piston so that it will go down nice and square. So just to where the gudgeon pin is. Nice and square in the bore. And then I'm going to use a set of millimetre feeler gauges. That's the minimum it should be, 0.1. I don't know if you'll be able to see this, but that goes in quite easily. So let's see if I can get a 0.2 in. There's a 0.2. Right, now the 0.2 won't go in. The next one is my scraper ring. So that's ring number 2. Let's get that in. Use the piston to push it down. Now this one, the gap should be bigger than 0.2 and less than 0.3. Less than 0.4, sorry. .2, nice and easy. 0.3. I can feel a bit of drag with that, so it's definitely bigger than 0.2, but 0.3 definitely is a little bit on the tight side. And 0.4, which is the top of the spec, well, that's not going to go in at all, so I'm happy with that one as well. And finally, I'll do the top ring. Use the piston to pull it down, push it down. Again, this should be bigger than 0.2. So 0.2 goes in nice and easy. Let's try 0.3. Now 0.3 isn't for going in. Let's try 2.05. So I'm using a 0.05 and a 2. Makes it a little bit fiddlier, but oh yeah, I can get that in. A little bit tight, but still can get it in. So it's between 0.2 and 0.25, so that one's good to go as well. So I can put those rings on the piston now, and piston number 4, making sure I've got all the numbering right. Make sure you have the rings in the right order, and then it's a case of just being careful so that you don't break it, because they are brittle, so you don't want to end up snapping them. And obviously with this one, it's going all the way down to the second lot, so you need to be careful as it's going past the slots. Working my way around to keep it as level as possible. Just get in there, and nearly there. Going down. And we're in on there. Just, and now all the way around. Yeah, we've got that one in. Next one is the scraper one that's got this little lip on it. The scraper bit goes to the bottom. Now I know I have got a set of piston rings pliers. Typically I can't find them. And the final one. Okay, keeping it as level as possible. Take it down, get it in. So that's the rings in. When I actually come to fit the barrels, I will give them a bit of lubricant. I've already cleaned up the pistons. So that's number 4. Ready to be installed. On piston number 2, the oil ring, I can't get a 0.1 millimeter feeler gauge in. So what I need to do is just ease the ends. So you need to get a fairly fine file, and it really doesn't take much. You need to keep it square and do a little bit off each side, and probably less than you think. I know some people will be throwing hands up in horror and saying you've actually got a special tool for this, and I'm sure you have, but you don't need to take that much off. Now, it will go in, but it's still a little bit on the tight side, so that's okay now.
that's all the piston rings on. You'll have noticed along the way I did have to adjust the end gaps on a couple, just filing them slightly. I actually think it's probably the protective coating that was just taking up that space. But anyway, they're done now. Other thing to mention, and it caught me out with one ring, is they do have a mark on them, usually either a T or an S, or if it's a oversized one it might have the 0.5 or 0.25. They go to the top. Frequently you can't see a difference other than on the scraper ring, but they do reckon that that's the wisdom of what you should do, so I made sure all of the markings were on the top. So what I need to do now, get the gudgeon pin clips and put them in one side, get the gudgeon pins and put the pistons onto the engine. Should be reasonably simple. What I've done is I've put the actual pins in the freezer. So I've already checked them. Although they've got some discoloration on them, they actually seem smooth as anything. I've checked whether they had any play as well. So I know that when they're actually freezing, they will feel a bit loose, hopefully, and should go in really easy. So I'll get the clips on first, then I'll pop the pistons on. So you want the exhaust facing towards the front, and you put the first clips on the inside so that you can put the pins on from the outside. Makes life a bit easier. The little gap here is so that you can actually prise the pin out. What you don't want is that you've got it like that. So it doesn't matter where that ends up really. So I'm going to put it in at the top first. There's a little groove inside, and it is a bit fiddly. And then squeeze it down. And I'm going to use my nail, and you heard it clip in, and as you can see it's nicely seated all the way around. So exhaust to the front, the pin can go in from this side. That didn't go too badly, and as usual I'll go around and check everything again. I always tend to check everything twice. Important one here, I've already done the rings and I did them twice, although you only saw me do them once. The clips that have gone in, I'll make sure they are really seated well, because there's nothing worse than one of those clips coming out and rubbing against the side of the bow. So I need to get the barrels painted now, so I'll get that sorted, and then I'll be very soon getting this engine together. I can't tell you how excited I'm getting. Probably not the best painting of a barrel you've seen, but I'm using this XHT extremely high temperature paint that's been well recommended to me and I have used before. What I'll do is over the next couple of days I'll put a few coats on, then I'll strip off the masking, I'll bang it in the oven at about 150 degrees for an hour. That way the paint hardens up even more so against the heat resistance that it has. I can't wait now to get all the parts out and get this engine put back together. If you've enjoyed this and you want to see how it works out, why not subscribe and follow along? Thanks for watching anyway, and if you do, give us a thumbs up or even a nice comment, that would be absolutely lovely.